Joining us right now is the general manager of my favorite team, the Los Angeles Rams, Les Snead. How you doing,
Did you say
Les?
that because it's not Ireland's?
Yeah, I'm a Raider fan.
Ireland's a Raiders fan.
He's a Ram fan. I grew up a Ram fan, and then when I got to UCLA, the Rams went to St. Louis, and the Raiders were playing at the Coliseum, and so we bought season tickets to the Raiders, and I got
So what are you going to do during this interview? Are you going to take the headset off?
take
No.
walk away.
I'm a big fan of yours.
He's going to yell Raiders.
Okay, you can stay. Right?
Yeah, but in one of the questions,
Raiders are AFC. We got to be your
I'm
NFC.
okay.
There you go.
Okay, we made a deal.
So here's what I was thinking. You've had great success, you and your staff, in finding guys in later rounds, whether it be Cooper Kupp or Puka Nacua or you name it. When you're in the draft and you've got that guy circled and you like Kupp and you like Nacua, but it's a smart league lesson. You've talked about it because you've worked other places. Other guys probably are onto those guys too. How do you decide whether or not to try and move up or wait and see if he's there when you pick?
Let's start with Puka. I do think we probably waited based on how he performed, probably a little too long.
You thought you might lose him?
Well, I would say this: we should have taken him early if we'd have thought he was going to break every rookie record. What usually happens in the draft, right? Based on based on where they're from, based on how they played in college, based on what they do at the combine. Combine weighs a lot in terms of there's a very solid correlation between how you do at the combine and where you're drafted.
I can't remember. Did he have a good combine?
His was a little less than for a receiver.
Okay.
Based on some of the speed, athletic measures.
Right.
Now, at the end of the day, that's different than how they play football. So we really appreciated some of the things, some of the variables that Puka showed on the football field and how they would translate to us in the role that we thought he could play. I do think he ascended to close to Rookie of the Year, breaking records is going back, situation. We like Puka as the person, how he fit. Situation, we get to OTAs, and Cooper Kupp is struggling with injuries.
Right.
Never really ever got over those injuries. But during OTAs, all of a sudden, Puka now has to play with the varsity, per se.
Right.
And now Matthew Stafford, Sean McVay, coaching staff start earning a trust with him that maybe if he would have come in just to be, let's call it a third, fourth, fifth receiver,
right?
Yes, he would have earned trust, but maybe not as much.
What you just described, I don't know if you've ever read any of John Wooden's stuff, but you just described what John Wooden used to say. He used to say, luck is when preparation meets opportunity.
Yes.
And that was Puka.
That is definitely Puka.
Yeah.
So with that, but I do think what we try to do with some of the analytics is based on, some metrics they do, where they came from, how they played, all-star performance, combine performance, things like that. You can predict a little bit maybe where they go in the draft.
Yeah.
But it's obvious both of those guys exceeded their, let's call it their draft IPO for sure.
Yeah. You've got two really record-breaking wide receivers here in Cooper Kupp and Puka Nacua, who we were just talking about. How do both of those guys integrate successfully into the offense? What does that look like to you?
The neat thing is they both play two different positions, and even though a lot of times they're considered very similar, they're different body types, which allows Puka to be able to play more outside, things like that. Cooper's proven he can play outside. He's bigger than most. He obviously dominates from the slot, a little bit more inside position. But you know what? Both of them, because of their football acumen, right, can even flip-flop during a game and be very versatile. And you talk about record-breaking receivers. Matthew Stafford's been a part of Puka, been a part of Cooper, been a part of Calvin Johnson.
Sure.
So Matthew has shown as a QB, you know what, when I have something good, boy, I'm going to go to the well, and that good may become great or produce great.
When there's a game tonight, the Hall of Fame games tonight, and both teams are taking the Sean McVay approach. Caleb Williams is not going to play. C.J. Stroud's not going to play. If Sean sticks with what he's done in past years, we won't see Matthew in the preseason. Les, I'm one of these guys that argues all the time, just get rid of the preseason. College football doesn't have it. We're talking about going to 18 games. Just get rid of it. Would you be, as a GM, handicapped or lessened if they got rid of the preseason? How do you feel about that position?
You know, I really don't think you would, and especially the way we do things. And if I gave some nuance, let's say in the preseason you really wanted to work on second and short, or let's call it second and 5 or less. Well, if you totally went to a preseason game, what if you never get in those situations?
Right.
You either get third and long. So point being is when we have the combined practices, the coaches can get together and say, "This is what I really want to work on."
So you would have no problem preparing for the regular season if there were no preseason games.
Definitely.
Okay.
I think what you might lose is in the combined practices, we do play our starters, our next role players more. So.
Right.
If you were to totally cancel the preseason, now I would probably have some out-of-the-box ideas of, hey, do we take some of these combined practices to maybe, let's call it different towns across America and practice in a high school stadium and bring football to where they don't have enough. You could do that. What you would need to do, though, is play the rookies, play some of those guys battling for those last spots a little more in those combined practices.
Right.
The way we do it is we pretty much play the varsity in those, and then we use the preseason to evaluate those players. Because you're not really evaluating those players on situations or the collective at that point on how we do in second and short or third and long. You're more evaluating the overall kind of talent skill set of the younger players.
So you drafted Jared Verse at 17, and then right away in the next round took Braden Fisk as teammate. Was that something that you guys had thought about? Let's get these two guys together, and what's the benefit of reuniting them at this level?
Definitely thought about it. Let's take this. I mean, there wasn't this sentimental because they both played at Florida State. Let's bring them back together. If they would have played at different teams, we would have probably had the same strategy. But what we did going back to what we talked about with Cooper and Puka, we felt like with Fisk, there was a chance we could get him in the second round. He might have gone late first, early second. Would he have fallen to us where we picked? Not sure. But we always felt like, you know what, Verse is definitely not falling. Let's take care of business there. Then let's strategize how to move up and get the second guy we wanted. So there's a little bit of, let's call it gamesmanship, game theory there.
I worshipped at the altar of Phil Jackson for a lot of years with my other job.
I did as well.
And so
I've always wanted to meet him, but hasn't.
You might get a chance. He's around sometimes. But he used to say to me, rookies are lower than whale poop. And I'm using poop as a.
I could easily see him.
Yeah. He goes, he didn't like playing rookies. I get the feeling Sean's not that way. And the reason I bring it up, Les, is I think Blake Corum could actually play meaningful downs and meaningful minutes this year. Would you be surprised if he had an impact on your team right away as a rookie?
Wouldn't be surprised at all, right? That's one of the reasons we drafted him to come in and be a two to Kyron. And hey, it's not like, oh, this has upside. We have to do this, this, and this to get him there. Like, he comes in somewhat ready-made.
Right. He
has the football acumen. He knows what it takes to learn an offense, to be able to process it, and also adjust and be dynamic during the game when Sean needs to adjust. So those type players, I think Phil Jackson would have liked a Blake Corum.
Yeah, like Luke Walton came along, and he was the exception to the rule.
And what ends up happening
is smart.
Is even when we were here and we were kind of in that window, it was harder for rookies to play. Why? Because you had a veteran team. You were in the window trying to compete for this championship. Phil's had a lot of those teams where they were in the window. And at the end of the day, developing rookies really wasn't the main thing. It was getting another ring, and they were doing a heck of a job collecting rings.
Right.
Yep. So your offense, one of the biggest jobs of the offense is obviously to keep Matthew Stafford standing. And the offensive line seems as solid as it's been since you've been here. The addition of Kevin Dotson last year that you found he wasn't really playing, and all of a sudden he is a great offensive lineman. Jonah Jackson, I know he's hurt right now, the status of him, but how do you feel about the offensive line?
As good as we felt ever since we've been here. And like you said, you mentioned it, they're sound, they're veterans, they've all played, and the reason, right, Matthew and his genre being one of the, let's call it the last pocket passers, probably, that's going to play NFL football. There will be a few more, but probably a lot less than him. That's a priority, right? He's at his best when he has time. He's able to use his experience, his acumen to read defenses, figure out. And if you give him a little bit more time, then yes, he can use his arm to, let's call it, make more explosive passes than intermediate passes.
Les, are you convinced personally that Aaron Donald has played his last down as a Ram?
That's how we approach it. I think you can't ever say never, because I know there's football players who miss football for the first time.
Well, Eric
Weddle
did it with you
rolled
a couple
off the
years
couch,
ago.
right?
Yeah, so that we've joked about that. I do think I do think Aaron Donald is a very principled human being, and he's one of those players that, you know what, he felt like he had given his all, and football had given a lot to him, and as he said, the cup was full.
Right.
I do think that I would bet on the cup being full and him not looking
All right, I have a
back.
ridiculous idea, and I want you to tell me if I'm crazy. I think Aaron Donald could be an action hero. I think he could be in the movies.
I
You
would
think he could
definitely
pull it
give
off?
him a shot.
Yeah.
I think in that commercial we did a few years ago, that kind of draft, steal the draft, and they
Right.
But some of our players were actually in it, and I think if I were in Hollywood, I'd go look at that commercial if it's still on YouTube somewhere and go, you know what, he did a pretty
Right.
dang
Like if
good
the
job.
A-Team was
Right,
coming along
right.
today,
Well, all
he'd
those
be
great
perfect
Jim
in the
Brown
Mr.
movies,
T
Fred
role.
Williamson movies, all those back in the day were great movies.
Maybe it's let's follow The Rock and go to WWE and then
There you go.
parlay
I
that
feel bad
into-
for the guy who gets in the ring
Yeah.
with him. Yeah.
So last year, I got to be honest with you, Les. I'm a huge Rams fan. I'm at all the games. I was super depressed after the loss at Green Bay, right? That put the team at 3-6.
Wow, you were only depressed?
I was depressed.
Yeah.
I was below that.
And
Yeah,
I
I was going to say, Les was we had to go pick him up out of the corner.
And I didn't think it was in there, and somehow the team rattled off a bunch of wins and got to 10. Is there something that was learned during that period that can be carried over to this year?
Here's what's interesting. With Matthew being out, there was an element of, depressed is a really good word. If you do go back, I think at that point we might have been 3-6.
Yeah.
We had played good football. Like, we opened against Seattle, got the win, and there was a little bit of feel good. But even in some of those games that we lost, we had actually played quality football and ended up being on the losing end. So there was this belief internally, and it wasn't just belief. We actually had proof that, okay, if Matthew comes back, which he was, then, hey, we have played really good football. Now this younger team that we have put on the field just needs to learn to cash in, to close the game out, to win. So we didn't think it was a pipe dream because, to be honest, to be frank, 3-6, I would have felt like, how many's that, 9 games? I would have felt like we should have been 5-4 based on how we played, and could have easily been. Not hoping you were, not looking, we lost by 14, and if we'd have done this, this, and this. I mean, there were some close games and there were some quality games in there. I can't really remember. I remember thinking that against Pittsburgh for sure. Some of those nuanced moments where all of a sudden you end up on the losing end and not the winning end.
You know, I forgot the question I was going to ask you about the offensive line. There's a definite difference in approach now, going with bigger guys. Talk about that sort of philosophy and the direction that you've gone with.
Well, the way Sean approaches the game, he wants to evolve. He wants to be dynamic. We felt like not only could that help Matthew Stafford in the pocket, but we definitely feel like running the football effectively and efficiently helps the QB probably more than protection, because it does keep the defense off balance. And they're in a little bit more 2nd and 5, and on 2nd and 5, offense can do a lot of things. They can run or pass. It's not, it's 2nd 11, and we know they're pretty much going to pass or run or draw.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, listen, we appreciate. I'm excited
Thanks,
for
man.
all 11 wins this
Great
year.
to see
man.
you.
I'm excited for all 11 wins.
Why stop at 11?
Yeah.
You got a dream, man.
It is great seeing you, man. Looking
Thanks
forward
for
to a
doing
great
that.
season.
Enjoyed
Les
it.
Snead,
Always have
General
fun.
Manager of the Los Angeles Rams, Mason, Ireland, 710 ESPN.